Welcome back to the quarterly call. All content is for informational purposes and is not investment advice. Please consult with an investment professional. Today, we're taking a closer look at the recent Snowflake Q1 fiscal year 2026 earnings call. And it's definitely more than just the numbers, right? It gives us a real sense of their strategic direction, the innovations happening.
Exactly. The financials are one piece, but the call itself, that's where you get the context, the why behind the number.
And those initial numbers, they were pretty strong. 26% year-over-year product revenue growth. That definitely caught my eye.
Yeah, and that's 28% if you adjust for the leap year, so no real slowdown there. Quarter-over-quarter stability, too.
Right. Plus that net revenue retention, 124%.
Yeah.
Seems quite healthy. And they even bumped up their forecast for the whole year. So definitely a positive backdrop.
It is a really solid start, and it lets us dig into what's actually driving that. The product side, how they're going to market, and of course, the big one, AI.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that. Starting with product innovation, it really feels like they're pushing hard on making the platform more cohesive, easier for users.
That's the theme, definitely. Making it simpler to get value from data, from the very beginning all the way to the insights.
And some of the newer stuff like Snowpark and dynamic tables seem to be getting good traction.
Yeah, actually better than expected in Q1, according to them. That suggests customers are really finding them useful, solving real problems.
Interesting. And they also talk about Apache Iceberg. Now, for maybe someone less technical listening, what's the big deal with Iceberg? What does that unlock?
Think of it as giving customers more openness and flexibility in how they manage their data tables. It helps with things like sharing data better, security, performance. It basically avoids locking you into one specific format or vendor. More control.
Got it. So more flexibility, better performance, always good. And the sheer volume of new features, over 125 in Q1 alone.
Oh. Yeah, double what they did last year in the same quarter. It shows a really rapid pace of innovation, which, you kind of need in this space.
Absolutely. And another thing they mentioned was Snowflake connectors, making it easier to pull data from, like, everyday tools. Google Drive, Workday, Slack.
Exactly. Breaking down those silos, they mentioned AstraZeneca, for instance, being able to analyze SAP and Workday data together more easily now.
That seems huge for getting that complete picture of the business.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just internal data, right? They talked about secure data sharing, too, enabling collaboration between companies. That network effect is powerful.
Okay, let's shift over to AI. Clearly a massive focus. I saw something like 5,200 weekly active accounts using their AML capabilities.
Yeah, that's a significant number. And they're really positioning Cortex AI as like a foundational piece for enterprise AI. We heard examples like speeding up clinical research or turning customer views into actual insights, so practical applications.
And Kraft Heinz using it for their internal AI assistant, HAT. That's interesting. Using their own tools internally.
Dog fooding, yeah. It shows they believe in it. And it's about embedding AI into workflows, boosting productivity everywhere.
Then there are the Cortex agents. What's the story there?
That seems to be about handling more complex data, both structured and unstructured. Think documents, emails, things like that. Crucial for a lot of AI applications. Luminate Data was mentioned as an early user.
And it's not just their own tech, right? They're integrating models like Llama 4 from Meta, partnering with Microsoft for OpenAI models on Azure.
Right. It's all about choice. Giving customers access to leading models, not locking them into just Snowflake's own stuff. That flexibility is key.
Makes sense. They also briefly touched on using AI, specifically Cortex, to help with data migrations, making that process smoother.
Yeah, streamlining what can be a really complex undertaking for many companies, using AI to automate parts of it.
Okay. Turning to how they're selling all this, the go-to-market side, sounds like the new CRO is bringing some renewed focus.
That was the message, yeah. More rigor, more discipline in the sales operations, and a big expansion in their addressable market with the new Snowflake public sector entity. Plus, getting that DoD authorization, that opens up the whole national security community.
That's a potentially huge new area for them. And they also mentioned specific solutions for automotive, like for CarMax and Nissan.
Exactly. Tailoring solutions for specific industries, part of their AI data cloud for manufacturing. It makes the offering more relevant to those specific verticals.
And like you said with Kraft Heinz, they're using their own AI internally too, for sales, customer views.
Yeah, Sales Knowledge Assistant powered by Cortex, a customer 360 app. Again, practicing what they preach, using AI to boost their own productivity.
And customer acquisition looks strong too. 451 net new customers. And those two huge deals, over $100 million each.
Yeah, both in financial services,
Yeah.
shows they can land those really large strategic enterprise contracts. And they mentioned having dedicated teams focused just on bringing in new logos.
Right. Okay, let's circle back to the financials then. We talked revenue, but what about margins and cash flow?
Pretty healthy. Non-GAAP product gross margin was around 75.7%. Non-GAAP operating margin hit 9%, which is up year over year. And non-GAAP adjusted free cash flow margin was solid at 20%. So balancing that growth investment with profitability.
Okay. And they were buying back shares too.
They were. Repurchased some in Q1, and they still have authorization left, usually seen as management being confident in the future outlook.
And speaking of outlook, the guidance for Q2 and the full year looked pretty positive. Still projecting around 25% growth year over year.
That's right, raised the full year guidance slightly, and they expect to maintain those healthy margin levels around 75% gross, 8% operating, and 25% adjusted free cash flow for the full year.
And a reminder for listeners, their Investor Day is coming up soon, June 3rd, alongside the Snowflake Summit. Probably more detail there.
Absolutely. That'll be the place for a deeper dive into the long-term strategy.
So let's pull back a bit now and talk about AI's overall impact and the strategy going forward. It sounds like customers are increasingly seeing Snowflake as making their data AI ready.
That connection is becoming clearer, yes. The idea that if you invest in organizing your data well on Snowflake, you're inherently setting yourself up for AI success.
And crucially, AI isn't like a separate thing you buy, it's integrated.
Exactly. It's woven into the platform, into the existing consumption model. Not an extra SKU, generally speaking. It enhances the core offering.
And their approach seems quite measured, focusing on use cases with real immediate value.
Seems that way. Pragmatic. Let's find where AI can make a difference now, not just chasing every shiny new object.
What about the relationship with the hyperscalers? Like Microsoft Azure, there's competition there, obviously,
Yep.
but also partnership.
Yeah, it's complex, but they highlighted collaboration. Things like reading tables directly in Microsoft's OneLake, potential deeper integrations down the line, maybe Cortex features showing up in Office Copilot. So acknowledging the competition, but finding ways to work together where it makes sense for the customer.
They mentioned AI ninjas. Sounds like they're really equipping the sales teams now.
Yeah, building that expertise internally to help customers identify and implement those AI use cases effectively, moving beyond just pilots to real scale.
And the platform itself is evolving too, with notebooks getting better, support for training bigger ML models.
Right. It's becoming more of an end-to-end platform, not just for data warehousing, but for actual ML development and deployment too. And the launch of Gen 2, their new compute environment, is key there. Better price performance, faster insights. That helps make these more advanced workloads feasible.
Did they talk about building their own foundation models? Like competing with OpenAI or Google?
Not really building those massive frontier models from scratch. Their focus seems more on optimizing the use of leading models, post-training, inference, that sort of thing. And they highlighted their work on open source embedding models, which are important building blocks. Partnering rather than competing head-on seems to be the strategy there.
And throughout all this, maintaining that balance between growth and profitability.
Yeah, they pointed to the operating margin improvement year over year while still making these big investments, particularly in AI and automation, to drive efficiency.
Okay, so wrapping this up, it feels like a really strong start to their fiscal year. Lots of innovation, especially around AI, a more focused go-to-market, and generally a positive outlook.
Definitely. The key theme seems to be that deep integration of AI across the board, driving value for customers and also making Snowflake itself more efficient.
And maybe the biggest takeaway for listeners is just how tightly linked data strategy and AI strategy are becoming. You really can't have effective AI without that solid data foundation first.
Exactly. That's becoming non-negotiable, really. Having your data house in order is the prerequisite for succeeding with AI. It's something every organization needs to be thinking about.
A really crucial point to consider as this landscape keeps evolving makes you think about how fundamental this infrastructure is becoming.
It really does. The ability to manage and leverage data effectively, that's going to define success moving forward.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Quarterly Call. For more episodes, please remember to rate and follow our show. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.